Hello, this presentation focuses on the eXP2 series of HMIs, and specifically we're going to be focusing on some of the differences between the eXP2 and the existing eXP1 series. So the eXP2 is part of the XGT panel series. So we do have a XGT panel catalog, which I'll show you guys at the end. I'll show you guys the marketing collateral. What it is it's a touchscreen HMI that runs on the Windows CE platform. This is kind of both a big picture overview of the panels as well as a kind of like a historical lesson on what's going on. So LS Electric America, we never really sold, as far as I know, the iXP series. That's an older series that's been replaced by the iXP2. With the iXP2 is kind of like our flagship higher line HMI series. The EXP and EXP2 are our entry level series. We commonly get a question is, all right, what's the difference? So I'll do a kind of like a big picture difference here because we're going to be mainly focusing on their newest product with the eXP2. And the eXP2 replaces the EXP, if you want to call it EXP1. That's what it replaces. The iXP2, significantly more cost compared to the EXP and EXP2. What you gain with that is you gain a aluminum bezel as opposed to like a plastic bezel and plastic frame. You also get a capacitive touchscreen, which is a glass touchscreen. You also have the capability to order it as an explosion-proof type if you run into an explosive environment. You also have a SD card slot on all of the models. It goes up to 15 inches, whereas the EXP 1 and 2 stop at 10.2 inches. And you also have like a HDMI output. So those are some of the key differences. But the EXP and EXP2 are very capable. You could do most of the stuff that the iXP2 could do. Especially, you'll see the comparison from the EXP to the EXP2. That's what these slides focus on. You'll see that we added a lot more capabilities to more mimic the iXP2, but at a more reasonable cost. And you can kind of see the most common question is, all right, what screen sizes do we have? 4.3 inches is probably the most common, and that's the smallest HMI we have for the eXP2 series. And then we go all the way up to 10.2. We also do have a 5.6 inch model, but we do not stock that as of yet. It's not really a common size. So I'd say most commonly we'll sell a 4.3 inch or a 7 inch. And then we do have stock. I just checked stock before I started this to make sure I'm not off, but we do have stock of, I believe, all of these HMIs. So here's some of the main features of the eXP2. First off, it's fully compatible with the EXP. So that's the first thing is, oh, eXP2, well, what about the old model? Okay, so again, eXP2 replaces the EXP series. It's the exact same physical dimensions. So if you have an OEM you're working with or you have a panel design, it's literally the exact same panel cutout. Okay, so same interface, same design, same pinout, everything there, and it's actually the same drawing file. So when I say drawing file, we're talking about XP Builder, and we'll mention this later. XP Builder is the free software you could download to create your HMI program. So if you have an EXP project file, you could easily convert it to an EXP2. So there's really no extra engineering involved from switching to the eXP2. And then as far as stock, I know I mentioned we have stock in this. We're gradually, selling and, depleting our EXP stock and replacing it with EXP2. So I think specifically for like the 7 inch and the 4 inch, I think our stock is all replaced by EXP2 and we're working on like the 10 inch now. So one of the advantages of the eXP2 is a better processor and more memory, more RAM. And so this is, all of the specifications and technical jargon, faster processor, more memory. It actually runs a Windows embedded compact versus I think there's just like a standard Windows CE before. I think we mentioned that a little bit later as well. So of course, higher processing power gives you a few different things. I kind of like these pictures on the bottom here. Your project, when you're downloading to the HMI, is going to download approximately 2 times faster. Screen changes are 4 times faster. So when you're changing from one screen to another, it'll go faster, less lag. General booting up of the HMI, after like a power cycle, initially loading a program is, 1.25 times faster. And then graphic rendering increased as far as the FPS from 50 FPS up to 98 FPS. Some other things that have been enhanced on the eXP2 are the backlight of the LCD has increased depending on what model you're looking at. So for like a 7-inch, it went from 20,000 hours up to 50,000. 10.1 inch is 20 hours to 20,000 hours to 30,000 hours. We still have the non-volatile memory backup, which is no batteries required for that. We are continually updating our communication drivers. Currently, we have about 105, and that's ever changing, based on demand for other protocols. I'll show you guys that list since that's also a common question we get. Hey, what drivers do you have? Can you talk to this device, etc. So these are some of the new things down here that they added to the eXP2. These were not on the original eXP. They were only on the iXP2. So these were the features I was mentioning that we were lacking before, and you'd have to jump to an iXP2, which would, cost more. We can now do a vertical mode. So that means like a portrait mode. You could turn the HMI up and down vertically, and you could have a display on there that, shifts around, rotates 90 degrees. We could do the PDF view. We could not do that before. And then we also have the capability to order the HMI to handle a SD card slot. We do have VNC capability. That was actually there on the previous eXP series. So we'll talk about different ways you could remote in as well. That's another common question. This is the model number breakdown. Very similar to the eXP series, but I would say better, because if anybody is familiar with the eXP series, you would order an eXP60, and then somehow an eXP60 would equate to a 10-inch HMI. So you're like, well, how does 60 equate to 10 inches? Didn't make too much sense. You can't even say it's metric. So now they made it so eXP2 is the series. Then after that, you have a 4, and as you would guess, a 4 would be a 4.3 inch. A 5 would be a 5.6 inch, a 7 would be a 7 inch, a 10 would be a 10.1 inch. Okay, so that is a little bit more intuitive. What we stock, I believe, is going to be the Windows CE 7.0 Core OS type. We stock the standard model, and the standard model means that it has a 232 port, so that's like a sub-D connection. We also have 485, 422, which is a hardwired connection, and then they also all have Ethernet. So all of the models we stock have built-in Ethernet. We don't stock the basic model. This would be, a little bit more cost-effective, but it does not have Ethernet. And then we have this advanced model, which is includes the SD card. We don't currently stock that, but as some of you guys may know, we could stock it if there's enough demand. We also stock the 24 volt variant. So all of these HMIs run off of 24 volt DC. And then I think what we stock is the 4X type. So EX IP66. So all of our HMIs are washdown rated IP66 UL type 4X. So this table here is just kind of showing side by side the differences between the eXP2 on the left here versus the eXP1. So you can see how the model numbers were a little bit weird. I was never a fan. So an eXP20 would be a 4-inch, eXP30 would be a 5-inch, but now it's eXP2 0400. That is a 4-inch, 500 5-inch, 700 7-inch. Okay. This is like breaking down the digits after the 4. So then there's a 00 or a 10, and that just changes the operating system. So 00, which is what we stock, is a Windows CE core. And then you could go to a higher level operating system. I don't see much of a need for that, so that's why we don't stock it. And then you could add a 1 at the end, and then you start having a SD card slot. So circle means we have it, X means we don't, depending on the model number. Okay. So these are some big tables, and just bear in mind that these will be sent out for everybody that put their email address in the registration. This is a nice competitive comparison. This is something we always get requested is, all right, how does your HMI compare to some of the competition? So these are just a few that you might run into. I know there's a lot more that you guys might run into. Maple Systems is a common one. Panel View, Allen Bradley, stuff like that. So we'll have to do those on a case-by-case basis. So WineTech and M2i is what we're showing you right here. And we're comparing it both to our old EXP series and the new eXP2 series. So these are all 7-inch HMIs here. So resolution, pretty comparable. Backlighting, slightly better. So we pretty much put in bold here things we have an advantage of. So RAM, pretty low on the WineTech, where we have 4 gigabits or 4 gigabytes. Whereas we're not meeting that with the M2i. More standard serial communication ports built in. So you can just see some of the advantages. Most of the time we're comparable. Sometimes we'll have advantages depending on who we're comparing to. I'm not going to read through all of these because that'd be pretty boring. But again, just bear in mind, we do have some competitive comparisons we could send out. So this is just showing more side-by-side EXP2 versus the EXP series. So of course, everything is going to be an advantage because it's a new product. So it's going to have, different RAM type in there, a better processor, which is, double the speed, more RAM, similar USB host devices and stuff like that. So the USB host devices, we don't get too into it with this, but you could plug in USB sticks, you could plug in keyboards, you could plug in a mouse, you could plug in printers, you could plug in peripheral devices and stuff like that. That's what the USB ports are there for. So it's pretty much a computer with a screen on it. There's another side-by-side comparison for a 10-inch. So for the 10-inch, we actually improved the resolution. So it goes up to 1024 by 600, whereas the old one wasn't the best resolution. And they also expanded the color gamut. So it used to be 65,000. Now we're up to 16 million. So this is similar to a iXP2. iXP2 is a higher color gamut. Better backlighting, you still have the Ethernet channels, USB host devices, communication ports, and so on. And then again, same dimensions as the old EXP1. All right, this is showing the 5.6 inch. I think you guys kind of get the idea. I'm not going to spend much time on this, especially since we don't stock it in the US yet. Doesn't seem like there's too much of a demand for 5-inch. 4.3 inch, I would say this is probably like our top seller. Very economical, small, 4.3 inch. And you could still do a lot with it. So the only limitation of this screen is the actual size and how many buttons you could map onto a screen. So this is showing side-by-side comparison. So it's pretty much identical. Exact same dimensions, exact same thing, terminals and everything like that. So they didn't really change much here besides improving the backlighting. All right, so here's kind of a nice picture that kind of just shows generally what it looks like. So the front, you have your LS logo, you have a USB port which you could use for backing up to a PC, reading and writing the project files, going into the runtime and downloading stuff. We do have a power indicator light on the front, which is kind of nice because you could have a black screen on here, but this will tell you if your actual power supply is good in case you have any issue. On the back, flip it over, you have a battery cover, and you remove this battery cover. You have a termination resistor you could flip on. The battery is disabled from the factory, so you'd probably want to enable it if you're doing any kind of time data retention, stuff like that, time stamping things. Make sure you enable the clock. Here's the sub D RS-232 port, 485 and 422 Ethernet port, and then your 24 volt, plus minus and a signal ground on there. So yeah, you have your USB port on the back that you could put a thumb drive on there for data logging. You could also do data logging via email. You could plug in a keyboard or a mouse and so on. So as mentioned, we have over 100 different drivers that you could select from. Of course, there's a bunch of LS Electric drivers. You'll also see there's like Rockwell drivers, Siemens drivers, General Schneider drivers, Modbus, TCP, so on. This is just kind of showing just, one HMI connected to another HMI running through a switch, connected to multiple drives. You could have drives connected to 485, you could have PLCs going to 422, and you could have another network going to Ethernet. So we can run multiple networks. It all depends on how many controllers you set up on the HMI. So since there is multiple outputs, we could run that. So here's just a list of communication drivers. So this is just ripped out of the catalog. So it's not like a secret list or anything. This is, public knowledge. But again, there's a lot of LS stuff. So if you happen to use LS VFDs, LS PLCs or whatever, you're going to have a pretty broad list right there. We do have backnet capabilities, Mitsubishi Electric, Omron, Panasonic. The big one is typically Rockwell or Profibus. We could do all the micro logics and control logic stuff. And we have done that before, so we have some experience in it. Schneider Electric, they have all the Modbus drivers, so we'll generally use that for any generic Modbus connection. We have all the Siemens S7 stuff, Logo Ethernet, Beckhoff. We have some Yaskawa stuff. I think so I think that was it. And again, this list is ever changing too, so it's always expanding. So be sure to check out the catalog, and you could actually check that list in the software, which I'll show you guys the software. So this is showing different ways to remote into an HMI. This is a common question we get. Okay, we want to remote in. What kind of capabilities do we have? So you don't need, and this is something I stress every day, you don't need a eXP2 to have remoting capabilities. You could get in with an eXP or an eXP2. So we have XP Remote, which is a computer software that you can remote into an HMI. We also have VNC, which is a free app you could download onto your phone, or you could load it onto your computer and you could remote in. And then we also have web server capabilities on all of the HMIs as well. So 3 different ways to get in. You'll notice that any program we mention here is free. So XP Manager is the program you use to set up the drivers for the HMI that would enable web server, VNC, XP Remote. So that program's free. And then obviously the drivers are free. You just go ahead and enable them. And then XP Remote is a software that LS has on our website. And then VNC is just a third-party program you can download. So you can remote in for free with any of these methods. Here's just more of a pictorial of what we mentioned earlier. We have the portrait mode where you could flip it on its side. You get like a taller view if you want that. This is just set up via XP Builder, which is the main program for the HMI. It's just a project property setting. PDF viewer, this is something that used to be only on the eXP2. So if we had a customer that says, oh, I want to display a PDF, you have to go to an eXP2. And again, cost goes up significantly. But now we have PDF viewing capabilities on the eXP2. So you could have a PDF pop up, for example, when an alarm is triggered. So a little troubleshooting guide, for example. It's all stored on external memory, such as a USB stick, so there's no limit to the number of files you have on there. You're not using the drives or the HMI's memory, you're using an external memory source. You could also set up the HMI to run with a FTP client to access an FTP server, so you could display all the files on that server. Okay, you could have PDF files on that server that pop up and trigger when you call them to. So all customizable. So here's the kind of the bread and butter of the HMIs, which is XP Builder. So this is what we probably do the most training on. We just did one the other day, is how do you use XP Builder? Where do you find it? So you find it on our website. We could also share a Google Drive link with you, and it downloads pretty quick that way too. So XP Builder is the screen drawing software, okay? So you pretty much open the software, you make a project file, an XPD project file, you set what HMI model you have, you set your driver in there, and then you make the project, you dump it in. So that's pretty much all of what this is mentioning here. And then the project file is also backed up onto the HMI. So if you don't want the customer to have access to the file, you just uncheck this box, and then there's no project file saved on the HMI anymore if you want to like protect your IP. So after you dump in your project, what the HMI runs is it runs a XP runtime, and this is a runtime environment on top of the Windows CE platform. So again, the HMI is essentially just a computer that's running Windows CE, and on top of that, we have our LS program, which is XP runtime, and the XP runtime runs all of the screens, the backup, the logging, the buttons, and all that stuff right there. Okay, so this user area here is what's created, the communication drivers, recipes, scripting, whatever. That's all created by the customer or integrator, whoever, in the XP Builder software. Okay. This is a little bit redundant, but this is kind of showing more details. So let's say we have two PLCs. In this case, we're showing you two LS PLCs. This could be any PLC you want. One is running serial, one is running Ethernet. We could connect both of those networks to one HMI. You would just set up a controller 0 and a controller 1, map the controllers, set up the addresses and stuff like that, and then you could communicate and then populate any data you want onto the HMI. Okay, so we can run various communication channels, multiple controllers off of one HMI. This is showing you multiple devices on a single network. This is like daisy chained, one PLC to another. You could have one VFD to another. You could have multiple HMIs on a network. You know, there's multiple things you could do. We're just kind of trying to show you that here. In this case, you only have one controller set up, and you set that network up for the device that's connected directly to the HMI, and then obviously this one just communicates to that one and then passes the data back to the HMI. So we're not going to get too technical. We're kind of utilizing this as a show you some of the capabilities that you guys could use, you know, for marketing the HMI and selling it. The HMIs also have internal devices, a long list of thousands of them, and they're pretty much going to start with a H. Maybe H stands for HMI, I don't know. But there's bit devices, and then there's word devices. HX is like a standard bit. HW and could be a bit or a word depending on how you format the address. You know, you put a period in there, then it makes it a bit. If you don't, then it's a word. All of these top lines here, HX and HW, those are not retained. So if you cycle power to the HMI, you're going to lose those values until they're read again. You could also set up a HK, that's like a hardware keep device, and those are retained values. So if you pop in a 10 into a numeric input, cycle power, that 10 will be there after the power cycles. So I know this is getting into the nitty-gritty of addressing, but just bear in mind there's a ton of registers that are built into the HMIs. This is again mentioning the registers a little bit more of how you'd go ahead and set them up. These are marked as internal registers when you're setting up the device, HW, HX, HK, and then you can go like 0 to 65,000. Okay. We also have HS registers. HS registers are system registers. So I know this might be kind of small unless you really like zoom in, but we have clocks in there, timers, 1 second timers, 2 second timers, days, month, all that stuff that's stored on the HMI can be utilized for your HMI program. Okay, so this is just showing different things you could do with those registers. One of the nice things is you could use it for scripting. So the scripting is pretty powerful, and this is a good time to mention our HMI doesn't have a PLC built into it. It doesn't have any logic built into it. The closest thing we have to logic is the scripting. Otherwise, it's just a touch screen with no I/O on it. You would connect it to a PLC to do the logic. The scripting is pretty powerful, though. You could take any of the registers that you map on there, and you could manipulate them. Like here, they're showing a if-else statement. So if this, do this, else do this. Okay. So if you're smart enough to figure out the scripting, that's a possibility. We could also use the registers to switch different languages and switch screens, trigger conditions based on timers. So hey, every 10 seconds do a logging of a certain device and record it. Again, that logging could be emailed, it could be saved onto a memory stick, multiple things you can do with it. This is the XP Builder software right here. Usually I do a demo, but we actually already have a demo of that on our YouTube page, which I'll show you at the end. So I'm not going to do that now, but this just shows the software. That again, the software is free to download. You go ahead and you open up a project, you start a program, you get a blank screen. So I call this like an open canvas kind of program. You have all these objects on the right here within your toolbox. You pretty much just drag and drop them, and then you start mapping the addresses. Your toolbars are all on the top here, and this is all fully customizable. You can customize the layout however you want. You're going to have a project tab, and then you got a screen tab. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys a little bit more of what's in each thing. Typically, the first thing you'd start out with is the screens. Hey, I need 10 different screens because I want to view 10 different things, okay? So you just hit the insert screen button, and then it starts recreating screens. You could also adjust the screen parts. So you could have pop-up screens that overlap your standard screens. You could also do, that's called a window screen. You could also do a screen part or a part screen. This is when you just want like a part of an object to show up, or a part of a bit or part of a word to show up, or like a certain figure or image or something like that. And then we could also do, this one's kind of specific to the eXP2, but you could set up the HDMI output, so you could have a larger screen next to the HMI to display what's going on. As far as objects, there's a ton of them. I'm not going to read through each and every one of these, but we have switch objects, such as like a change screen switch. So you press a button, screen goes to the next screen. We have bit switches, which would enable or disable a bit. Same thing for a word. We have bit lamps, we have end state lamps, we have clock outputs, we have bit messages, word messages, text displays. I know a lot of this is jargon, so if some of you guys know about HMIs, hopefully this looks familiar. If you don't, that would be, I guess, a more in-depth class. We could do different calls for different windows, word parts. We have animations that brings up little animated GIFs and stuff like that. We also have a bunch of graphing capabilities as well. Additional functions here on the right, we have history alarm viewers, data lists, PDF viewers, VNC viewers, multimedias. We could play videos on the HMIs, the FTP client we mentioned, slider controls. Should be everything you guys would ever need. And I think, yeah, this slide right here is kind of a nice one. Some different manufacturers from what we mentioned earlier. So now we got Proface, Mitsubishi, and M2i. So this is just to kind of show that, the naming structure of our objects, which we call a switch, a lamp, a clock, a message, should be pretty close to some of the competition. So if you have a customer OEM integrator that's like, oh, I don't want to, reinvent the wheel and have to learn a new program, this is kind of demonstrating that it really shouldn't be too bad, because we call it a switch and Mitsubishi calls it a switch, okay? We call it a clock, okay, they call it a clock for M2i, but they call it like a date time display. It's intuitive enough, hopefully, where people should be able to figure it out, okay? This is, again, just a continuation of that. We call it a logging viewer. They call it a sampling data or a historical data or a log view. It's hard to match everybody when everybody calls it something different. So I'm getting towards the end here. I think I only have one or two more slides. So what I want to end with is just kind of showing some of the marketing collateral. So I like to say we have kind of three different things that all talk about HMIs, and it depends on how broad you want to be. So we have our general XGT panel catalog, and all these are available on our website. This shows all of the HMIs. The eXP2 series shows just the eXP2 series, and then the factory automation one shows the HMIs, servos, PLCs, gearboxes, and stuff like that. So again, it depends on how much you want to get into it. So I have all these saved on my computer. So if we just started out with like the eXP2 series, make this bigger here. Maybe a little bit too big. This is a nice kind of like 8-page, it's called a catalog, but it's almost like a flyer. So we're showing you the 4-inch, the 7-inch, going on to the 10-inch and the 5.6-inch. This is specific to the eXP2. So kind of short and sweet. Hopefully this looks familiar, to the point. showing hardware descriptions, general specifications, stuff like that. This doesn't show the list of the drivers. So if you wanted like a list of the drivers, I'd recommend going to the XGT catalog. So this one is a bit bigger, 36 pages. And this one shows pretty much all of the HMIs, starting with the eXP2 series. So that's the higher level one. Then the eXP2 series is what we're focusing on. And I think they finally get rid of the eXP. I think they mention it on the bottom, but I don't think there's a section for it. And then if you go a few pages in, you should find nice details about scripting, recipes, scheduling, operation logging, linking with different controllers. So this is a nice in-depth catalog to keep people busy. Web server, VNC, so on. I think we go one or two more pages. We should have here, communication drivers. Here's the communication drivers. So that's what I had on the slides. And then the biggest catalog is this factory automation catalog. So this one's about 50 pages. And there's a blurb about HMIs, there's a blurb about PLCs, there's a blurb about servos, there's a little bit of everything in here. Smart IO. And I mention this every day. I know the sales guys like to sell it. We don't stock all these products in here, but they are available. Might just be a significant lead time. All right, so I have one more slide here, and then we'll open it up for questions if there is any questions. So that was some of the marketing collateral that's available on our website. I'll send out links for this for everybody that registered too, since I should have your email. So here's just some more technical support resources and references. So we do have HMI videos on our YouTube page. So our YouTube page is lselectricamerica.com. So we have like 50 or 60 videos. You can see we got some Profinet videos we just uploaded. LS Electric VFD Ethernet setup here. DriveView 9 videos, HMI remote connection, 800 and HMI. So if you just scroll around a bit, XP Builder Basics. If you guys wanted more information on how to make a program and stuff, I'd recommend this XP Builder Basics. So we made this one last year, a couple thousand views. That's kind of nice. Then we have our knowledge base, and hopefully people know about our knowledge base, even if you don't do just HMIs. So our knowledge base is like a self-help thing. So if you go and search HMIs on there, you're going to get about 33 articles. Here's the pinout for an eXP20 HMI. Here's the explosion certification for the HMIs. All the data you need. How do I set up remote access for my HMIs? Well, here's a setup guide for you. Step by step what you got to do. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff out there. We could also do training. I commonly do 1 hour WebExes that just show you how to make a program, and then after that we kind of let the customer loose, and they can come back to us if they have any questions. We do have a database of sample projects that could be shared as requested. Usually, just reverse engineering a sample project helps out people a lot. Otherwise, you just use the standard tech support sales or tech support channels for help. The tech support shared inbox, the 800 numbers. That is all I had. So thank you guys. Thank you again, and have a good rest of the day.